There's a cliche often associated with hypergrowth startups that running one is like learning how to fly a plane while you're already up in the air. Or perhaps it's like learning how to change an engine while you're still driving a car. My favorite version of this analogy is that it's like learning how to build a plane and then learning how to fly it and also mastering how to change its engine midair even as you're hurtling at hundreds of kilometers per hour through the air. A great example of such a startup is Udaan, which in 2019 became India's fastest unicorn within just 3 years of starting up. What does it take to build and scale a company in that manner? A few weeks ago, you heard Vaibhav Gupta, Udaan's co founder and CEO, answer this question in granular detail, right down to how Udaan looked at the trade cycle of, say, a small mobile accessory shopkeeper in Mysore who got his supply from Bangalore every 15 days, or the exact changes Udaan made to their warehouses so that they're more efficient. Vaibhav even broke down Udaan's execution playbooks and what makes them reliable and repeatable. But what happens when you zoom out a little? The more high level decisions, what bets to take, which ones to let go, which patterns to follow, what the B2B retail space in India might look like in, say, 10 years, and what is Udaan doing to prepare for it. This is the episode where Vaibhav zooms out and reflects on some of those questions. He's still very sharp and detail oriented, of course. In fact, you'll hear him say retail is detail with an unshakable conviction very soon in this episode. But this time, you'll notice that the larger decisions that Vaibhav makes for his organization stem from his own strong beliefs and learnings. He's an introvert, but he has learned to discuss even his half formed, unbaked ideas with his team. He's driven by solving big problems, and so is Udaan. He's become comfortable with being wrong, and that it's a feeling his employees are encouraged to embrace at every stage. We talk about all the mental models, habits, and frameworks that drive Vaibhav and the culture at Udaan. And of course, how first principles thinking is very crucial to all of those. Please enjoy the conversation. So Udaan, when it started, was I think one of the fastest or the fastest company to become a unicorn. The three of you obviously came from Flipkart. You had very illustrated, storied backgrounds. You went on to subsequently raise more money, and I think a $3.2 billion valuation. And then, of course, then there was this period of reckoning where you had a couple of rounds of layoffs. You had to raise money at a lower valuation. The number that we got from our research is 1.8 billion. So you're still a unicorn, of course, which is still a massive thing. $1.8 billion is nothing to scoff at. But the arc, and from our conversation also, what seems to be coming is like there was this, when you started out, it was very ambitious, massive funding, massive opportunity. And then you went through this period of, I think, learning, unlearning, reckoning, where some of that got corrected. And now you're sort of rebuilding it with a more, I think, sustainable, longer term approach. Is that how you see that as well? Or how do you as the founder process this? Because starting with this very high expectation and then like how to build, what the opportunity is, what our valuation is, and having some of that kind of corrected, and then once again, continuing to build.
See, there are always all different threads play in the head. I don't think it's one versus another. There are things which are constant and have been reformed during the last 7 years. There are things where we have learned and changed and learnt more, and right. Or there are things we've learned. Oh, we were wrong, and we have to you have to go all through those journeys. They all stay with you. We started with a sense that it's a very big market. Inefficient, unorganized market will get organized. That was the thesis. I think that has been reaffirmed every single day. Right. Now, I do believe Udaan is going to be one of the companies which will organize India. I'm sure there'll be multiple companies, but I do believe it will be one of them, right? So that thing has stayed. Now, through that journey, a lot of iterations on the business model, where how we started, what do we need, what capabilities, it has changed, and kind of that has become journey. Uh, we've also we have our journey of capital markets. Capital markets in India have had their own journeys. Capital markets across the globe have had their own journeys. We have sort of going through that alongside our own journeys. So, to me, I think the the big thing about us is, which kind of continues to excite me, and I believe is important for shareholders, which I think is their central thesis for anybody coming in this round or prior, or even as we think about futures, will be everybody knows and believes that it's a very big market, and they also believe it's unorganized and inefficient. Everybody is, including me, is about finding the answer of what is that business model which can actually really capture this opportunity, right? And I believe that for us, we've made a lot of progress. I think, as I said, I don't think anybody has solved it yet, but I think there is an answer that I'm 100% sure. uh, and I think for us, I feel good that we internally believe that we are making massive progress towards that answer, and it's becoming more real. Now, what that does is it kind of, you bring that visibility to your shareholders, new and old, and they kind of see that, and then they make their call. So, uh, needless to say, going valuations, growing as well as tight environments, valuation adjusting, yeah, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it in your head. You have to ensure that you have to bring it visibility to your organization. They also, employees also feel, everybody goes through, I'm going through myself, right? So, but I think the central idea of there is a big market and there is an answer, that's the most important thing, right? And I learned it from actually Kalyan. He was a lot of, in many ways, my mentor.
The
He's,
Flipkart CEO.
yeah, he told me once that, Vijay, the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. As long as you can do that, you have an ability to ensure that you find something great.
What is that for you?
For me, it is that, there is a massive opportunity behind Udaan and there is an answer. As long as we kept that as the most important thing and we kept working on finding that answer, everything else will get settled.
Weber, what's your advice as a founder to other founders when it comes to valuations? Because things have corrected now the last maybe 12 to 18 months, but before that, valuations was one of the way through which a lot of startup conversations happened. What's the valuation? How much has it gone up through? And I think most people do not realize that valuations are merely but an option or a bet on a future growth that you're promising investors, right? So if you have very high valuations, it often means that you have also promised very high growth and at some point very high profits as well. Uh, this
Yeah.
realization is now coming in, but what would be your advice to other founders when it comes to thinking and communicating about valuations, especially to their employees, etc.?
So I won't frame it as an advice. I think for everybody the answer is different. I can share kind of what goes in my head, right? Uh, I believe that uh, for any founder or team who's building the company, I think the most important thing is intellectual honesty about and focus about, do we believe that we have a market, a business which can grow and become big and can be profitable, right? What is that? I think that fundamental belief, clarity, and conviction is important. Now, obviously, all of us can have conviction. You may not be right, but at least you need that conviction and clarity at an intellectually honest way. To me, that's the most important thing. Because once you have that, and you're kind of putting every month, every quarter in that direction, you're sort of moving. Once you're rooted there, you need that anchor ship to then root everything around it, right? Because if you don't have that, I've seen kind of struggles which cycles which will become just vicious cycles. So you need to be rooted in that, and then you need to think about, see, the value of your share price. Uh, there are important stakeholders who it is important to them, and it is really important to them. Your investors, your early stage investors, your late stage investors, uh, your partners, your vendors, your banking partners, your employees, right? So I don't believe that you can dismiss it. And I don't think that is the approach, at least I have done. But you have to be very rooted on the anchor. Like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what we believe, right? Once you bring transparency on, like, this is what we're trying to do, this is where we are, bring that to employees, bring that to everybody, there will always be this sense of there is a market clearing value at any point of time. And then kind of you obviously try to make sure you do best for your early shareholders as well as your employees, but you also have to keep the view of future in your head. Like, you don't want to be overpriced also, right? Or you don't want to be underpriced. You try your best to get that, and then you be kind of go after assuming you have the business, everything will work, because then your employees will listen because they also believe there is a business. Your investors will also listen because they believe there is a business. So I think it's important to root over there. It's important to root it in the opportunity is real, it will get there, this is how it will look like, and then let the market kind of figure out the right value. So I think to me it has to be separated. The valuation conversation has to come after the clarity and conviction on the business.
Have you observed any changes in the broader talent market, or how employees are seeing careers and jobs with startups? Especially in Bangalore, you run a well-known, well-funded, known startup, and there used to be a time where it was Bangalore used to be one of the hardest markets to find talented people and to retain talented people. Have you seen any kind of a, I think, significant change in the way talented employees are looking at what kind of companies they want to join and what kind of work they want to do?
So I think, Rohin, I may not have very strong depth on that. I think the one pattern which I've seen is that actually two patterns I've seen. More on the senior side. I don't have the depth on the junior side or early side. On the senior side, I've seen two patterns. There is a set of folks who are a little bit of who've gone through vintages of different startups within Bangalore. Probably like 12, 13 years. I've spent 2, 3 years, 3, 4 years in few different. I think when I talk to them, clearly they are they're in that zone, like, we have seen enough. We get ups and downs, right? But now I have learned, and this is what is the kind of company I want to go to. They're far more clearer about it, right? So far more, there is an angle of long term coming in them. I am seeing also executives who come from kind of the more established large companies who want to come to. I think they're also becoming far more deeper in the conversations about which companies to join, what to think, what to expect. So I think I think that inflow has gotten less
That
from
I would assume so, because I think that inflow was maximized during the boom years when there was a large shift of senior level execs from
yeah.
established companies to startups,
I think
drawn
from
by the
14
valuations.
to
Yeah,
20, like 2013, 14 through Flipkart, when we were through kind of 2020, there was
yeah.
that period where there was heavy.
And then I think during the last maybe year or two,
Yeah.
there's been a little bit of a reverse migration where I
Because
think,
I
yeah.
think the notion of startup itself in Bangalore is changing or India is changing.
How so?
Because I think that whole journey, right? Pele, there was a sense that for a lot of people, I think they felt they were looking at external surface level indicators of scaled up media conversation valuation as a confirmation of, hey, great product market fit, great business model, great organization, right? But I think in India, a lot of those media or surface level informations were far ahead of the time of the reality of where the underlying sort of company's potential is there, but the reality. And when people made those journeys in, they were kind of they couldn't handle the kind of the expectation they came in versus that. And for some of them who kind of had the desire and appetite, and they were all good guys, and I think for the others it didn't make sense.
Switching lines to thinking about careers, you've you did your engineering, then you worked at Trilogy, then you went and did your MBA in the US, then you worked as a McKinsey consultant, then you joined Flipkart, and then of course you left Flipkart and started Udaan. It's a fairly interesting set of career choices. With the benefit of your own experiences and hindsight, what is your you did not seem to like the word advice. So, what would be your I don't know. I mean, I think advice is the closest I can get, right? For others, when it comes to thinking about careers.
सी इतनी भी ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग जर्नी नहीं है, वो इंजीनियर किया, नौकरी करी, एमबीए किया, उसके
No, but like at that point, like there was a potential path where you were at McKinsey, where you could have chosen to
another
either
job.
stay on
Yeah,
at
yeah.
McKinsey and go down
And
the
that's one of
consultant
the
route.
that was one big kind of that was one big one key stay
Yeah.
in job or sort of go into the startups, right?
And at that point, it was also the other one was staying in the US versus coming back to India, which
No,
kind of coincided for
yeah,
you.
yeah. See, मेरे को लगता है कि I truly believe that last 10 years and I believe the next 15-20 years, kind of that period, is a very important part in the is a very important opportunity. Companies who will be the top 100 companies in India in 2050, right? We are sitting in 2024, 2050 May, 2050 May. The top 50 or top 100 companies in India. I believe more than half of them would be created now, right, across any sector, right? And they're either created in the last 10 years, some of them, and over the next 15 years. So I do believe in the context of India, creating has a very is very fruitful, right? Uh, so I would say that from a career point of view, everybody should evaluate the opportunities to create something. Now, my learning has been that it definitely takes good time to really build something of value. And I think that's where I've seen a lot of people not willing to or kind of not being comfortable with that. Oh, gee, it'll take 10 years to build something. And I think that to me is one thing which I've seen where people kind of switch 2 3 years, 2 3 years, things like that, which I think people should really, really think about, especially after they have done sort of 8 10 years of work. You shouldn't switch like after 2 3 years. You need to see some cycles of something at a good place with good people. You need to see some cycles, and that actually I think creates a lot of capability in you to do things. I think that's kind of is what I will share.
What do you feel is what you add most value to Udaan as its CEO?
I think one of the biggest roles which I believe I'm playing now, which I never thought about, is being able to keep everyone in sync of what we are trying to do, why we are trying to do, what did we learn, what did we fail at, uh, what does this mean, what does that mean. Uh, I think keeping everything in sync, right, and to me is the probably the biggest value. And second would be like being able to ensure just prioritization, like what's most important right now to focus on what's not. I think those two things.
Do you feel that there's been a shift in your thinking about prioritization from your early years at Udaan to now? And I'll explain. You said prioritization is about what to do and what not to do, right? Do you feel that, I know this is a leading question, that do you feel that you're now much clearer about what not to do?
I would say I would put in the time factor more, Rohin. I think uh, I've seen that evolution in me, and also I think in other people in Udaan. This sense of you need to give time to something before you actually make a call on it. And thus, it gives you an ability to stay at it for longer. I think that's, and the idea of, thus, you cannot stay at 15 things for long. You can do 15 things in a year, bum, 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 bum. But you can't do, you can't stay at 15 things for a long and keep doing them. And depth, which
So
forces
prioritization
it
is
forces,
forced.
yeah. Otherwise, earlier it was like, yeah, there are 10 things out. Right now, this is important. Let's do this. Or right now, this quarter, this important. Do this. But that the importance of staying something at long and let the results come out after some time.
So naturally, that leads to no one can focus on many things for
Yeah, and
long.
I
So
think
you,
those how you derive the prioritization is changed.
I'll stick with the same question. Do you find it easier to say no to things today than when you did earlier on? I mean, when people come to you and say, to use your same example, 15 things, we need to do those 15 things. Now, the person making the recommendation 15 and recommendation 14 will have a very strong use case as to why we should invest time, money, effort, resources into that. But as a business, you will have to have some point say, no, I mean, we will not do that. When you're starting a business as a founder, you don't want to do that because it's like the world looks like your oyster. Yes, let's do this. This could also work. This could also work, etc. So this is the shift that I'm trying to understand, right? When
I'm sure different people are different. For me, I think uh, one of the things I would say, Amod, Sujit, and I think very like the large 8, 9 people, early part of Udaan team, founding team. I think one of the things we all cherished was authenticity and transparency to our best of our abilities, right? I think वो हमेशा से ही रहा है उड़ान में. And so it was never hard to have hard conversations. It was like I think generally वो एक स्टाइल ही रहा है कि यार ये सब चीज़ें क्लियर हैं, ये क्लियर नहीं है, अभी ये कर रहे हैं. And I think that was the same kind of style which went with our investors as well. So the type of investors we brought were also of that approach. So I don't think it has been that has changed कि यार अच्छा ये अब कर रहे हैं नहीं कर रहे हैं. I think it is very important to be visible कि तुम्हारे अंदर क्या चेंज आ रहा है. And I think that have become more visible about. पहले आई एम अ वेरी इंट्रोवर्ट, दिमाग में चलता रहेगा फिर अच्छा ये कर देते हैं.
yeah,
हाँ.
what is that? You just said the change in you has become more
क्योंकि
visible.
पहले में ये था कि मेरे दिमाग में कुछ चल रहा है मैं उसी को करता रहूंगा और फिर अच्छा चलो ये करते हैं. I was a noodle a lot, but not very visible with my noodling thought process. Now I'm a lot more visible with my unbaked noodling thought process and ये
So
सोच रहा
others
हूँ.
understand
That,
as well
so I think
what's
that's
going on.
important कि you have to be more visible about, and I think that's an evolution for me. I'd seen other people. I saw Bajal doing it very well. I saw Bajal doing it almost like a magician. Like he will come across into something as कि you would not seem कि यार
Sorry,
he's
is this your investor,
yeah,
Bejul
Bajal,
Sumaya?
yeah.
Yeah.
He would come across like you'd sit in a room like you talk to him and he'll say share ideas which he's not clear about he's got going on in his head, and then it'll lock to like, oh okay, you learned so much about what he's doing but it's not yet, and so you know what is going in his head. And I think I learned a lot from that. Yeah.
What is your span of control at Udaan? How many people report to you?
I think will be about somewhere it always stayed in the zone of 8 to 10 for a longish period of time.
What would most of them agree about you as a manager?
As a manager,
Or
I
as a
think
CEO? I mean,
I think
it's
they will
open-ended.
mostly agree that uh, I care about the depth of the answer, and that's the most important thing to me, not iterations.
Not speed of
No,
response.
that's one. Second is I care about actions. So there is some level of impatience I have if actions aren't happening. Those two things.
Right. In the broader organization, your colleagues, could you tell us what are three most common adjectives they might use to describe you?
I think they would say I'm pushy, right? Impatient. Yeah. Willing to change the point of view.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is it that truly drives you? What makes you get up each day and come to
It's
work,
the same
work
thing which I
hard?
told you, I think, during the break, like the most important thing. I think there is a massive opportunity for any founder or for me or at Udaan to build a big company which can have major impact in India.
How do you visualize this? Like I mean, how do you think about it? Do you
I think, if I can, in 5 years, uh, we have, we can move to 4-5 million shopkeepers in this country, uh, regularly having a meaningful impact to their business, to their lives, to their uh, and uh, employees having that impact, and um, manufacturers and farmers feeling that they've grown their businesses, shareholders at Udaan believing that they've got it the risk they've paid for, employees feeling good about what they achieved. I think that's what I imagine.
all founders, most people go through ups and downs. What you said earlier, you're an introvert, that there are some changes that you've brought about in yourself, but what gets you through the down times?
AI take time. Typically, I think uh, I've learned to realize that I take time, so that has helped me. Uh,
That's very interesting. Can I just ask you what that means? I
like,
take time and I've learned then I take
yeah.
time.
So means I think earlier, you know, I'm sure as I was growing up, always there were kind of areas where you fail, and then you're like, oh shit, it has sort of impacted you, and you've gone into a zone of, feeling low about it, and sad, and disappointed, frustrated, angry, all of those, right? And then I realized I started looking a pattern that after maybe a week, 15 days, kind of that thing sort of went away. And some of the most thing which I thought was like this is done. Nothing is there in my life anymore. After 15 days or 20 days, it was so there was a sense of pattern. It takes time for me to sort of come out of things. And I've seen that. So I'm more comfortable being I'm more I've developed more comfort for being low because I know it's a kind of I feel that it's a time
So you
based
give yourself
a
the
time
time.
to get out of it. I think what also has changed from me, it's more personal, is like kids. Like I have two kids. One is 10 years, one is 6 years. You know, I
What are their
tend
names?
one is the elder one is Kartike and the younger one is Siddharth. I feel that when I am down, I try to actively engage more with them. So it brings a little level of comfort with things, right? So that has helped a lot. Um, Third is I've started talking more to people about kind of what happened, what's your sense. Earlier I won't do that, so talking about it also has increased a little bit.
I mean, colleagues, friends, family, everyone.
Colleagues, friends, family, like all kind of
Was
people.
that a conscious process?
I think it's sort of I tried like one of the things I did was I got a coach,
An
right?
executive
Yeah,
coach?
yeah, and he really helped me sort of the importance of being open about both the visibility of your thought process and kind of your kind of what you're going through. And so he pushed me into it. I tried it. Kind of it felt good, and then sort of I worked through
How long have you been working with a coach?
that. For almost a year and a half. अभी recently 5-6 महीने से थोड़ा has been less, but I think earlier it was about a year and a half.
How would you describe? I mean, most of the founders that I've met have talked about, like most recently before you, I met Anish Reddy of Capillary. He also talked about how he went through a really low phase, and then his board asked him to work with a coach, which actually was one of the things that really helped him. How would you describe working with an executive coach? What are some of the things that it helped you with or opened you up to?
I think it just gives you visibility depending upon the person. For me, um, I just got a lot more visibility about kind of how different uh, CEOs or business leaders or founders, what kind of things they are doing, what are the different things people try. So you get a lot more idea generation, right? And that kind of then you start thinking about what you want to pick out of it. Yeah, I think that's
What's your philosophy about feedback, both giving feedback as well as receiving feedback?
it should be very frequent, continuous. Uh, it should be 50-50. Like you have to build, unless I think I think that you have to ask more than you have to give. At least it has helped me. I don't know if it has helped Udaan or not. I do
By that
fundamentally.
means solicit more feedback
Yeah.
for yourself than
Yeah.
you're giving.
I mean, like ask more people कि यार क्या चल रहा है, कैसा लग रहा है, क्या हुआ, do you think I did well or not, इसमें क्या issue है, what worked, what didn't work. I believe, and it should be more sort of informal and more frequent than more formal. That's kind of my style.
What's the best time to give you feedback on something?
कभी भी, I guess. I think people do that. People will say कि यार विजय आप उस मीटिंग में क्या बोल रहे थे, मतलब क्यों आप ये ड्रामा कर रहे हो, मतलब you could have said this way, मेरी टीम वाले को ऐसे लग गया.
All right.
And they'll be like,
on that question, what's the one line that your team or organization dreads hearing from you after a meeting or in a meeting?
oh, I think they all likely accept that whatever needs to be done, I'll ask for 2x of that in half the time. So
As
they're
of
all,
yesterday and
so they're
yeah.
kind of in that zone of always like, they're always a little bit, people are trying different ways of ki, what statement I should say without committing something, and then that kind of thing.
But isn't that hard? Because then, like, I mean, implicitly, this is a pattern that exists with most CEOs and founders as well, that there's a certain amount of padding because you know that you'll be pushed. So it's in some ways, it's like the bargaining thing where, like, the shopkeeper knows that, like, this is the price, but I'm going to, like, inflate it so that I have space to reduce it.
I think it depends on the culture of the company and the people on the table. I think to me, if the people on the table, and I've seen this in Flipkart as well as in Udaan, by the way, these are the two I've been part of. People on the table, 9 out of the 10 times, and 9 out of the 10 people own the company more than the founder. Once that mechanics happen, then this doesn't happen. So I think that's an important mechanics. Like they should be like, okay, I'm here because of my belief in Udaan, not because I have a relationship with VG.
What are some of your favorite mental models that you use often when it comes to either decision making or running the organization?
One definitely is depth and hyperrealism. Like
What does that mean?
means like don't like there is a tendency in conversation in problem solving, people using hypotheticals and anecdotes. That has a tendency. I don't believe. I push for. It's a thing we're trying to learn at Udaan as well. Push for exactly the specifics for that particular thing, to the nth level of detail. What happened in this? Who did that? Who sent that email? If he clicked, somebody, an inward executive, clicked on a box. Why did he click on that box? What message he saw? Let's get the data of that invoice. What was print? What was physical? I think it's about just going very deep on with real facts and getting a real view of reality. To me, is very important for at least Udaan's business. So that's definitely one mental model I've gotten used to more and more, and that leads to कि अच्छा ये हुआ, अच्छा किसने क्या बोला था, क्यों बोला था, एंड उस बंदे ने उसी को कॉल करो, विल कॉल देम इन द मीटिंग इटसेल्फ कि अच्छा आपने ये बोला था, क्या हुआ था, किसने ये बोला था, फिर वी विल कॉल द ड्राइवर. सो वी आर सिटिंग एज एग्जीक्यूटिव, विल स्टार्ट कॉलिंग एवरीबडी. We'll call the driver, we'll call the customer, we'll call the vendor, we'll call the labor in that call itself. We'll not say कि ये बाद में करेंगे, अभी करेंगे, इसका feedback नहीं. We'll all and we'll call them and we'll ask them क्या हुआ. We'll patch them in the call immediately. So to me, that idea of just getting very sharp about reality and not letting it go, अच्छा कल बात करेंगे, नहीं अभी करेंगे. Do it in the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour max.
Why
Getting
is
a,
this so important?
मुझे लगता है कि इट एक्चुअली एंड्स अप गिविंग यू द बेस्ट आंसर्स. वरना क्या होता है कि आंसर्स की नुआंस मिस हो जाती है. और हमारे बिजनेस में इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन आवर बिजनेस टू गेट नुआंसेस राइट. दैट्स माई लर्निंग. इफ यू गेट द नुआंसेस राइट, you actually build the real the answer of this business is in that, like people say, right, retail is about details. I think that's the intuitive understanding I am building. So that's one big mental model we're pushing. The second big mental model is you have to, sometimes I go out of my way to help people feel comfortable about being wrong, right? It cannot be a stigma, it cannot be, and it's important that we do that in the company. Like mistake हुई है, admit it quickly, figure out, change it quickly. RCAs are seen as, I'm trying to get, RCAs are seen as a good thing.
Sorry, RCA being root cause
Yeah,
analysis.
it's seen as a good thing. It's like not the person not feeling defensive about it. We have to get that culture of. So that's the second one. Third is patterns. Like when people use patterns for, they chase. This is something we talked about a lot as well in Udaan, is that don't chase a solution, chase a problem. It's also come in multiple ways. Like it has basic another way to say first principles. Like yes, you have a lot of things you see in the world. ये ऐसे यहाँ पे हो रहा है, ऐसे यहाँ पे हो रहा है, ऐसे यहाँ पे हो रहा है. ये पोटेंशियल एक आंसर है. FMCG डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऐसे करते हैं, अलीबाबा ऐसे करता है, 4 कंपनियाँ ऐसे कर रही हैं, राइट? You have to be aware of patterns, but you have to be very, very first principle driven. Cannot go with the patterns. You have to be very active.
So you're reducing the risk that someone looks at a lot of solutions and tries to impose a solution
They'll
on a
find
world where the problem doesn't
the
exist.
problem needs, because I think that's the market we are trying to solve for. It's not like कि यार Amazon ने US में solve कर दिया, अब
You
आके
can't
यहाँ
just
solve.
transpose a
Because
solution
the
from
market
them.
itself, the problem is itself different.
Got it. How do you decide? I mean, you said earlier that, it's one of the transitions for you and for Udaan is like how to stick with some things, projects, etc., for a longer period of time. Right? But I think there's always this thing of when do you decide that this bet is enough and it's time? And this is one of the trickiest decisions, right? Like, maybe you've done it for 4 quarters, maybe you've done it for 6 quarters, and maybe it's showing enough. No one can ever know this. Perhaps if you stuck with it for 2 more quarters, that would have been the period when it took off, but perhaps maybe not. So, do you have a method to realize, or do you have an approach as to when to say, look, this is enough now, let's probably stop doing
No,
this?
I don't think we have figured that out. I think we're learning through that. So I don't think I have a clarity on that. Some of the tactics we deploy is definitely we seek collective intelligence. For almost everything, I believe there are sort of 4, 5, 6 people, either in Udaan, outside, who I believe have more depth about that topic, have gone through the depth of that. So those are the people you should talk to. You can't talk to everybody for every decision. So people who you respect कि हाँ यार ये लोग इस बारे में इन्होंने थोड़ा मेहनत किया, इनको समझ में आता है, इनसे बात करते हैं. यू गेट देयर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यूज. सब तक कई बार तो क्लियर होता है डेटा में, कई बार कन्विक्शन में क्लियर होता है, कई बार वो नहीं होता. तो यू टॉक टू अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल एंड गेट देयर फीडबैक एंड सी kind of what that is. You kind of seek people on. We have experts you kind of bring. Sometimes if it is, depending upon what it is, you bring in board as well into it.
Got it.
And sometimes you just have to make a call. And at the end of the day, as long as you can get 7, 8 out of 10 right, I think it's a good hit rate.
Got it. How do you learn?
I think all different ways. You learn by seeing others, you learn by people sharing their point of views, you learn by asking questions, learn by doing
I'll rephrase the
mistakes.
question. How do you learn outside of the regular day to day job of being CEO and founder, where you're interacting with, you're consciously learning things which you might not be exposed to in your normal day to day life as a CEO?
I think bunch of my, just given my personality or what's natural to me is uh, the people I'll come to respect for from various signals. I'll come to respect them, and I don't know them. I'll reach out to them and I'll say, let's, I want to have a coffee or lunch, talk to you about, depending upon the context. That's my most used approach to actually getting to know something which is outside.
What does a productive day in office look like for you? That at the end of it, you're like happy and wow, that was a great day. What might you have done that day?
Different comes in different flavors. Uh, that
Maybe most recently, what was the day that
आई थिंक सो कई बार ऐसे लगता है कि there are times where you've been at a problem for a long while, you've been iterating through, and you've tried a lot of things, and finally you see something which starts clicking, and you see real validation of that. That makes you very, very, and that gives you a lot of energy. And there are times where there are days where we've been, now a lot of things we were saying, by we're putting a big execution machinery in the company, उसको काफ़ी टाइम से ट्राई करते हैं, और उसके बाद जब लगता है ओके नाउ दिस इज़ वर्किंग अक्रॉस, वी आर गेटिंग द फीडबैक, you feel. So when you achieve something which you've been working for a while, or a problem you've been kind of iterating through, you get something. These are typically, or sometimes you meet also people in the company who will be like कि यार मज़ा आ रहा है विजय, and that kind of just feels you कि हाँ यार मतलब there is, you feel कि हाँ मतलब कुछ तो मेहनत का कर रहे हैं. Sometimes you feel, we meet customers who will give you. A lot of times I've seen vendors and customers just uplifts us. वो बोलते हैं कि सर बहुत बड़ा बनेगा सर, बढ़िया काम कर रहे हो, ये बड़ी चीज़ है. You meet customers, you meet vendors, उनको क्लियरिटी कि ये बड़ा बनेगा.
a lot of the stuff that you're saying about what gives you joy is also when you're, I mean, from your own words, meeting employees, meeting customers, meeting vendors, etc. But yet you're also an introvert. So how do you, like, how has this, like, how do you balance your natural introversion with the fact that as CEO and also as running a large B2B, B2B business, you got to constantly be meeting people? Does it stress you?
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. मतलब आई डोंट थिंक देर आर, मुझे लगता है कि लाइक यस आई नूडल अ लॉट इन माई हेड, बट आई एम ऑल्सो ड्रिवन बाय माई हेड ऑल्सो, राइट. अभी तो मेरे दिमाग में उड़ान चल रहा है, तो उसकी वजह से बहुत एनर्जी आती है. तो उसकी वजह से दैट ड्राइव्स यू कि अरे इससे भी बात करते हैं, उससे भी बात करते हैं. सो आई एम, दैट एनर्जी इज ड्राइविंग मी, राइट. सो मतलब आई डोंट थिंक दैट काइंड ऑफ सर्व्स एज अ हैवीनेस आता है. अगर आप ये बोलेंगे, मेरे घर वाले मम्मी बोलेंगे कि यार उस शादी में जाना है, तो फट जाएगी कि यार उन चाचा के किसी लड़के की शादी है जाओ यार, तो थोड़ी फटती है.
Got it.
Yeah.
What are you paranoid about?
मिसिंग द राइट आंसर, क्योंकि मुझे पता कि आंसर है बट वी डोंट गेट इट.
But that's also what drives you.
Yeah.
I think my next question would have been that typically, what do you believe will not change for the next 10 to 20 years? I think you already gave that answer, that there are things, the digitalization of the space that you're operating in is a longer trend which is playing out. So you can certainly take that for granted. Is there anything else that you feel that for the next 10 to 20 years, we can take this as a given and build for it?
In the context of businesses and business opportunity in India, I think it's if you look at it comes from the reality of the India. In the next 10 years, the biggest movement in India is actually happening from 400, 500 million people will move from lower middle class or sort of kind of below the poverty or around poverty, lower middle class to actually middle class. That's the biggest movement in this country, right? Which is going to happen in terms of the size of in the next 15, 20 years, right? What that means is that for at least 15 years, the middle class of India is going to be the biggest opportunity. And solving for middle class of India through different ways. Either you create a product or you create a platform or you create a channel or distribution, retail, offline, online, or you create a tech platform, whatever you create. But if your target is kind of that mass India, middle India, I think it's almost critical in India is to solve for cost. If you don't have a cost advantage, you will not be able to build a profitable business. You have to be obsessive about cost advantage. Cost advantage doesn't mean being cheap. Cost advantage means as a business advantage.
So it's interesting. So the days of you have a funds advantage are over. Now it's really the cost advantage. So where you could say that, a business will win the space because they have more funding and they can continue to burn more than others or capture more of the market are definitely over.
See, I don't think I was associating with that. Means I believe that idea of in India startups and ecosystem has gone through a cycle, and that's true by the way. I'm not saying it's a pattern where the capital and the importance of the capital to win or the early scale. I think there is far more richness about that thought process, right? I don't think it completely goes with certain products, certain markets. There is still a strategic value of scaling early because of the effects and network effects over there. But what I'm broadly talking about is all businesses we want to become very big, focusing on middle India. They need to really think about if I'm designing my supply chain or if I'm designing my product, if I'm designing my marketing, anything I'm solving, how am I at scale gonna do it at a much lower cost than my competitors? Who are my competitors? What are they doing? And what is the cost? I believe is key to building big businesses in India.
Good. Do you read books?
Not much.
Largely because of the time
No,
function?
just like I've never been like growing up
Got it.
very fond of them. But I do
What do you
watch
do
a
in
lot
your
of
free time?
I do watch a lot of sitcoms. That's something which kind of keeps me, either you can say helps me sort of break off, engages me, I find enjoy.
What are some of your favorite sitcoms?
I love Seinfeld. I'll watch it again and again. Uh, I kind of watch, I think, Big Bang Theory for a while. I was a craze about that.
Got it.
I'll watch the Friends. There are some of the Indian ones. Uh, I watch Jawan Samal Ke. So you kind of just repeat them over and
Right.
over again. Yeah.
All right. Outside of work, is there any kind of
Everybody loves Raymond.
Yeah. So I noticed that all of your choices are from the earlier era. I mean, these are all great series, and I've rewatched Seinfeld many times as well. But they're like you, Zaban Samal Ke. I was surprised to hear that come up after so many years. I don't think many people will even know what Zaban Samal Ke is today.
Just maybe like
So,
I think I'm not. It's not about by deliberation. It's just maybe I've not seen some of the recent ones from. So once
no, I
if
think
I
the
get
classics
something
are
nice,
great. Like, I just
I like
made an
the new one,
observation.
which is the Sheldon one is a new one which I started watching.
Young Sheldon.
Young Sheldon. So it's not like new
Right.
versus old, but I think the sitcoms kind of just give me. I enjoy them. That's all.
Outside of work, do you have any hobbies or interests that you've geeked out on recently?
I travel a lot, both for work or without work. Like I think I like to travel a lot, and so I, for work I will, I tend to almost do 2 to 3 days every week. I would go for travel, like city, customer, vendor, and it just gives me a lot of energy. Not, I just like it, right? And If I go to cities, mostly I'll go and visit a temple. I've seen that builds me a sense of connection with the place. Uh, I travel a lot with my kids. I'll take them to different places. Okay.
What has been your most recent favorite vacation?
So I took them to Chennai to watch the India Australia World Cup match, the first one. So my kids are crazy about cricket, and I think that was one of the kind of really meaningful trip for all of us. Like they loved it. They saw the game going down. They were stressed. They were crying, and then India won. They were happy, and we traveled. It was amazing.
How do you think you might be different as a person than you are as a professional?
I don't think very different. I think for
So, the people who know you in your personal life,
will probably say the same.
there's a very strong correlation with your.
I think you get different because if you as a professional you're working in a professional setup where there was a culture of that setup and you stay 10-15 years in that setup, so it changes you, and thus kind of people in personal life may see you differently.
Hmm.
But kind of I've been working, and I'm sure it's true for you, like you've been working in your own culture as a startup, so you kind of don't change that much.
What does personal time look like for you?
So kind of between me and my wife, the way we do it is in the morning I spend
Sorry,
time.
what's your wife's name?
Aditi. So what we do is in the morning I spend time with kids. I'll kind of drop them to the school bus. In the evening, she will. She's also working for another startup, so we kind of manage our lives that way. On the weekends, I'll spend a lot of time with kids mostly. Just they'll do their classes. I take them swimming. I'm taking swimming with them, so kind of spend time with them. Mostly weekends tend to be with them.
So, weekends and personal time is largely family time.
Yeah.
Which morning of the week do you look forward to the most?
I'm very excited on Mondays. आई थिंक बिकॉज वी लाइक ओके पिछले हफ्ते बहुत सारी चीज़ें करी थी, विल सी सबका रिजल्ट क्या है.
Right. Thanks a bunch, Vaibhav, for
Okay,
taking the
thank
time
you,
with us.
Rohin.
Really appreciate having you
This
here.
was fun.
Thank you.